Oh, are you crying again? How sad. Boo-hoo.
Duinya sat at the back of the tiny cell she had been thrown into the day before. She had her knees up, and she wrapped her arms around them, as if to create a safe haven from this strange and scary place. Ever since she got snatched, she had been ignored and isolated. She peeked up at the trio of people who looked at her from the other side of the cage. One of them had been the person who grabbed her, who hit her multiple times, and had said so many cruel things to her. That person, Zarita, was a nasty adult. The second had been the one who was apparently the leader, like what Mama was, only eviler. She had short red hair, chilling blue eyes, and a red suit with blue stripes in it. The woman called herself Columbia, and was also a bad person, but not as evil as the third person. The third person made Duinya cower. The third person was a thin Nymphian, with long, dark purple hair tied into a ponytail. It trailed down her back. She wore a pair of red-framed glasses in front of blood-red eyes. There was a small mole on her right nostril. Her eyebrows were slightly bushy. She wore a lab coat with a shooting star pattern. Beneath her lab coat, she wore a dark blue set of slacks, a pair of open-toed sandals, and a seafoam green t-shirt with a cartoon turtle with bushy eyebrows on the front of it.
And how are we feeling today, little one?
I want to go home.
Oh, she wants to go home.
Why are you doing this to me? I didn't do anything to you.
Columbia leaned down and peered at her with starving eyes. Eyes that made Duinya want to melt into the floor.
Oh, you didn't do anything, little one. Your parents did. They killed my mother.
That's not true. My mom and my mama wouldn't ever do anything so mean.
But they did, little one. They did kill my mother. However, to be fair, she was trying to kill them first. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is that you are going to make things right.
I am?
Yes, you are. Mojita, explain what you are going to do to her.
Columbia stood back up and then gestured to the other one named Mojita. The purple ponytailed Nymphian with the blood-red eyes got closer to the cage. And those eyes sparkled with so much chilling madness. Tears started to well in Duinya's eyes.
Oh, she's gonna cry again.
Little child, you will be the core component in the implementation of a brand new artifact. One that will enact a powerful ritual. It has never been tested before, and so you are going to be the first one to test it. Isn't that exciting?
What kind of ritual? What's gonna happen?
Your soul will be forcibly extracted from your body, and it shall power the rebirth engine.
What does extracted mean?
Well, I'm going to rip your soul from your body, so I can place another soul inside it.
What's gonna happen to me?
You are going to be absorbed by my artifact. And for all intents and purposes, die.
But if I die, I won't ever get to see my mom or my mama again. I won't get to go on picnics or give hugs or see my friends at my mama's work.
Well, of course you won't ever see them, sweetie. We killed them.
A great swelling and pressure built within Duinya's chest.
No, you're lying. You didn't kill my parents. They're too powerful.
Oh, but we did, little one.
It's true. I made sure none of them could leave the Citadel. Then I set the core to melt down. They're all dead, and you're all alone.
And soon you'll be gone too. But your body will be the perfect host for someone far more deserving.
Someone more deserving?
Oh, don't worry your pretty little head about it, little one. soon you'll be reunited with your parents, and me with mine.
All three of the horrible adults started laughing together. Tears trailed down Duinya's cheeks, and yet she stood there and pointed at the leader.
You're wrong! My mom and my mama love me, and they would never leave me behind like that! My Auntie Elvinia is smarter than you, and my Auntie Linnet is good at figuring things out too!
If they're so powerful and so smart, then why aren't they here yet?
I don't know, but they're coming! You'll see! They'll make you pay!
Columbia opened her mouth to speak, but then alarms started going off. The amusement fell from their faces, and they all looked at one another. The one named Mojita pulled out a crystal ball and started dancing her fingers across it.
What is going on?
It seems this child is correct. We are being invaded by an army of clay soldiers.
Clay soldiers? Ugh! All right, this won't disrupt the plan. Let loose the wax minions first, but activate the destroyer prototypes.
Yes, ma'am.
Zarita, you stay here with the brat. Mojita, get down to R&D and prep the rebirth engine. As for me, I'm going to hold them off until it's ready.
Duinya squared her shoulders and balled her little fists.
You're gonna fail! My mom and mama are gonna make you sorry!
We'll see, you little brat.
It's time. You all might want to transform. As soon as the portal opens, there won't be any time to spare.
Right. Everyone on 3.
Dana pulled out her drachma and then gazed at the other 7 untransformed guardians. Even the 3 original members looked to her for guidance and awaited her actions. To be honest, it felt really great, despite the crushing weight of expectation. Dana lifted the coin above her head, and then the others did too.
Demeter Sparkling Power!
Sue Sparkling Power!
Poseidon Sparkling Power!
Hades Sparkling Power!
Persephone Sparkling Power!
Hestia Sparkling Power!
Glorious Sparkling Power!
Iris Sparkling Power!
The green and white field of light engulfed Dana, and when it was done, she stood as Sparkle Guardian Demeter. The others were in their garb as well. When they transformed, the 6 Nymphians all stood back and watched the spectacle.
I had never seen any of you transform before. Wow.
Wow is right.
It was more beautiful than I hoped it would be. I've seen it on camera, but obviously this is better than that. Are we ready?
No, wait. Let me bring out my forces.
Alfreda turned her attention toward the backyard, where 50 clay statues were poised out in the open. The surviving members of the Anam refining department watched from the doorways of the structure, although they wanted to stay out of the way, Dana was sure. A yellow shimmer coated Alfreda's hands, and then the statues began shining too. There was a flash, and then there was a company of clay warriors where once the statues rested.
Listen well! The enemy has taken my daughter. And so, we're going to get her back.
At once, all 50 soldiers slammed their clay fists against their chests.
As soon as the portal opens up, you're going to storm in and clear the way. Fight hard, my warriors. Get my daughter back.
Though the soldiers could not yell, the blank intensity of their eyes said it all. Alfreda turned back to Elvinia. The head of R&D was adorned in artifacts and weapons, much in the same way she had been when Dana and the original 3 fought against her. Elvinia wore a pair of bright blue boots. She had dark red cloth gloves and a belt with small pouches on it. A pair of goggles was over her eyes, and she held a staff with a large purple orb on the top of it. The other 2 R&D arcanists, as what Linnet had referred to them as in passing, were also adorned in artifacts. The one named Alali actually had a pair of white birch branch wands, one on either side of the hip, like they were six-shooters. Considering how these Nymphians made their magical items, they very well could have been. Alali had a belt on, with small pouches, a piece of torso armor that looked like Kevlar, and a headband around her forehead. Karina also wore a similar belt, with pouches. Linnet wore a tactical vest, which probably afforded some protections. She also wore some really cute boots, a pair of shin guards, and a sort of circular device on her throat. It probably did something to Linnet's voice, which gave Dana slight tremors. As sweet and demure as Linnet was, she had some intense magic. Alfreda had a Kevlar vest, similar to Linnet's, and she also wore a pair of slacks. Nixie wore a vest, but also had a dress with slits up the sides and a pair of gray boots that laced all the way up the front. She also wore black leggings.
Okay. Get ready.
Elvinia took out a black crystal from the crystal harmonizer artifact that she had developed. After a brief moment of hesitation, she slipped the crystal into the slot of a wand. She moved to the back door and then pointed the wand at the back porch. Sparkle Guardian Demeter clenched her stomach as she waited for something to happen. A black bead of light rippled into existence, and then it began to expand larger until a sizable portal split open the air. On the interior of the portal stood a strange room with large platforms in various places. There were other Nymphians inside, and they stared in confusion. From just beyond the edges of the portal, Demeter saw the soldiers start to sprint inside. Screams echoed from within the portal, and then Demeter saw Alfreda's soldiers fighting with the enemy Nymphians. Alfreda pointed to the side of the portal facing Demeter and the others, and then ran through it.
All right, let's go.
Poseidon and Persephone chased after Alfreda, followed by Nixie, and then Demeter ran behind them. To be honest, Demeter expected some kind of feeling or sensation to come over her when she moved through the portal. There wasn't any direct feeling, but the air in the enemy citadel was a little more crisp than at Linnet's and Elvinia's home. Alfreda's soldiers formed a defensive line around the mouth of the portal, and at first the other Nymphians just ran away. An alarm started blaring through the complex. Within minutes, a legion of lacquered wooden warriors barreled into the chamber. They didn't hesitate, and they rushed where the line of clay soldiers were. A thunderous crash resonated out, and the battle erupted into silent but grim violence. Demeter collected her magic into her hands, and she filtered it into her staff. She jabbed the hard metal floor of the citadel, and vines sprang up from below. It had been just as Poseidon had suggested, and despite the nature of the citadel, plants burst from the floor like writhing tentacles. They grabbed wooden creatures and flung them about, thinning the enemy forces for the clay soldiers. A massive stream of water burst from the tip of Poseidon's trident, and it barreled into some of the wooden creatures. He made sure not to hit any of Alfreda's soldiers, which is probably why Zeus and Hestia didn't blast them from a distance. Hestia, Zeus, and Iris all stood beside the Nymphians, behind the combat, while Persephone, Hades, and Poseidon waded into the fray. While Persephone and Poseidon had their weapons, Hades had his hands and feet. Boreas soared above them and knocked the wooden creatures away with his icy tornadoes, and Demeter continued to pummel them with expert vine work. Within 10 minutes or so, the teleportation chamber became quite still. Half of the clay soldiers who had entered through the portal lay broken, but the others remained. Demeter peered a little closer at the clay soldiers, and they were doing something interesting. They were bending down to collect the broken remains of their fallen comrades and absorbing the clay into themselves to repair their wounds.
Okay, Alfreda. Your soldiers are way better than they used to be. And now they self-heal? Oh, thank goodness they weren't like this when we fought before.
What can I say? I learned a bunch from our encounters. Everyone, well, soldiers, secure the room, make sure none of the enemy reclaim it.
Alfreda reached into her side bag while Elvinia moved up to one of the terminals. Carefully and quickly, she started positioning a dozen more clay soldiers, this time some of which were mounted. Her hands glowed and suddenly 12 more soldiers were large-sized. 5 of them rode horses and had long spears.
You can do cavalry now?
Okay, I've hacked into their system. I'm downloading a schematic of their citadel now.
Can you please find Duinya?
That is the first thing I'm searching for, I promise.
Most of Alfreda's soldiers positioned themselves by the entranceway, with spears, bows, swords, and such prepared. 4 of them stayed closer to the teleporter pads, perhaps in case anyone else came back to the citadel. Demeter stood off to the side, and the other Sparkle Guardians gathered around her.
Not gonna lie, this is so exciting! What are we gonna do?
Once Elvinia tells us where we need to go, we're going to storm in and cause as much destruction as we can. Only attempts to defeat the evil Nymphians. This is obviously the most dangerous thing we've done, so we're going to need to be extra cautious. Look out for one another, fight hard, and we will get through this.
One by one, the Sparkle Guardians nodded, and a great sense of warmth blossomed within Demeter's insides.
Okay, I found her. I'll program your crystal with the directions on how to find her. Duinya is in the detention wing. It seems Zarita is there, guarding her.
Good. I want to make that bitch pay.
We will, darling. We most certainly will.
Sparkle Guardians, if you all take a right at the next intersection and follow it, you'll come to the main administrative offices, where Columbia and the other Nymphians are at. Be careful. As for my strike team, we'll be running to the left corridor along with Nixie and Alfreda, at least until we split.
Linnet gestured to herself.
Everyone, please gather around. I have something I can give you.
You mean like you did in the battle against Merica?
Yes, only it seems that my powers have matured and developed since then. This time, it will last longer. At least twice as long as it did.
Ooh, what is she going to give us?
A power-up. This will totally help, thank you.
Linnet drew in a deep breath, and then she sang. Magical strands of energy stretched out from Linnet's mouth, and they slithered on the air with elegant grace. Each of the strands touched one of the Sparkle Guardians, or the Nymphians. When they did, their bodies began glowing with a bright light. The light faded when she stopped singing.
Whoa, what did you do to us? I feel... well, great!
You all will have increased awareness, speed, reaction time, and overall physical performance. It lasts longer than it would have 5 years ago, but it's still a short duration.
If that's the case, then let's get this started now. The operation begins. 5 of you come with me. Nixie, let's go get our baby girl.
Nixie, Alfreda, and 5 of the clay soldiers took off down the hallway, leading to where their daughter was. A moment later, Elvinia, Linnet, and the other 2 Nymphians left the chamber as well. The clay soldiers were positioned well, but their attention was on the entryway, and not the Sparkle Guardians. Demeter turned to her allies.
Let's go. And do what we do best. Let's sparkle and kick some ass!
With Linnet's Song of Heroines in effect, moving down the corridor was no trouble at all. Nixie held her vape pen in hand, and a violent fire burned within her. As soon as Alfreda had described that Zarita had struck her child, a seething dark hatred festered in her. That Zarita! She would pay for doing that to her sweet baby girl. Alfreda ran beside her, and the clay soldiers sprinted just behind them.
Turn right, here.
Nixie reached into her pouch and pulled out a bright orange cartridge, and then replaced it with the one she currently had in her vape pen. They turned a corner and made it down about 300 feet when 3 large hulking creatures moved up the corridor. They were made from rock and steel, like gargoyles without wings. Each one had to have been over 10 feet tall and over 2,000 pounds. Nixie and Alfreda stopped and the soldiers moved in front of them.
Those could be a problem.
Give me 1 second, then leave it to me.
Nixie pulled out another vape cartridge from her pouch, this time a bright green one, and she put it in the chamber. One of the monsters roared and started stepping forward toward them.
Are you sure you got this, beloved? I don't doubt you, but they are pretty big.
Trust me, babe. It was my fault they got Duinya, so I have aggression to work out. I also need a warm-up before we face Zarita.
Before Alfreda could respond, Nixie sprinted past the soldiers. The monsters clenched their fists and then stood in aggressive forms. One misstep, and they would clobber Nixie for sure. However, Nixie couldn't afford to make even one misstep. As she approached them, she brought the vape pen to her lips. She inhaled. The monster closest to her punched out at her. It was fast, but Nixie was faster. She spun around to the side, moved just past the massive fist, and then sprinted under its arm. When Nixie was right under the monster's chin, she blew out a large cloud of green smoke. The vape smoke billowed up and surrounded the monster's face. A moment later, the monster howled. As the smoke thinned, a slimy sheen of green acid coated its skin. The body was melting in on itself. Within seconds, the monster took a knee, then collapsed to the ground. Perhaps enraged at seeing the death of its friend, the second monster hopped forward and tried to smash Nixie under a double fist. Nixie rolled forward and got quite close to the monster's legs. It glanced down at her as she covered its lower body in green vape smoke. Nixie stepped away as it also collapsed on the ground. Its cries were hard to listen to, but Nixie pushed them away from her attention. After all, there was one more giant creature left. She inhaled her vape pen for a third time, but before she could move forward, the clay soldiers sprinted past her. United as one, the clay soldiers barreled into the monster's legs, and it flipped on its back. Nixie blew smoke on its face before it could get back up. Alfreda stepped up to Nixie and grabbed her by the shoulders.
You listen to me, Nixie. This was not your fault. If you're to blame for letting Duinya go, I'm to blame for hiring Zarita and not realizing she was a corporate spy. We can't focus on who's to blame. We have to focus on saving Duinya. We can do it, okay?
Okay, you're right. We did the best we could with the knowledge we had. We will save Duinya.
We're close. We're almost there.
A massive series of explosions echoed from somewhere in the Citadel.
Wow, the Sparkle Dorks are really giving the enemy the business. I'm glad they're on our side again.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Nixie, Alfreda, and the soldiers ran down a flight of stairs and came upon two more hulking minions. While the soldiers distracted them, Nixie got in real close and melted their faces. Two of the soldiers were crushed, but the remaining three absorbed the clay into themselves. The door to the detention wing was large, which made sense considering the size of the minions. The interior was empty, with a single occupied cell at the very back. Only a few lights were on in the wing, which left much of the room coated in shadow. A small child, the best child in the world, sat in the cell.
Duinya! We're here, darling!
Mama! Mom! Be careful! That mean shadow lady just disappeared!
Nixie and Alfreda looked at one another, and then Alfreda gestured for her remaining three soldiers to enter. They moved in behind the soldiers, and Alfreda pulled out a flashlight from her bag, while Nixie pulled out a vape cartridge with a golden liquid in it. She slipped it into the chamber and then returned the other one in her bag. From somewhere, Zarita's voice echoed out, although Nixie couldn't rightly pinpoint it.
Well, it looks like the little brat was right. You two did come for her.
Of course we did. You're going to pay for abducting her.
And for hitting her.
Oh, I'm so scared! You're going to have to find me before you can do anything to me!
Alfreda screamed and writhed slightly, and Nixie turned to look at her. That's when she saw it. Zarita was falling into the floor, into the shadow behind Alfreda. A small cut had been carved into one of Alfreda's shoulders, but the armor absorbed most of the attack. Some blood still dripped from the shallow wound.
Where did she even come from?
I think she dropped from the ceiling.
Zarita tumbled out of one of the shadows and landed right behind one of the clay soldiers. As it turned to face her, she hopped out and drove a silver dagger into its chin. For but a moment, she hung there, a wily smile on Zarita's face. Just as Nixie and Alfreda moved toward her, Zarita placed her feet on the wiggling soldier's chest. She kicked off of it, freeing the dagger, and then backflipped into another shadow. Nixie darted her attention all around, even gazing upward to avoid another dive from above.
Oh, Duinya, get ready to watch your parents die!
No! Leave them alone!
Nixie whirled to the right as Zarita tumbled from above, flopping unceremoniously out of the wall shadow, right on top of one of the soldiers. The soldier, to its credit, swung its clay staff at its shoulder as Zarita landed on it. While it did smack her, she still buried her dagger in its skull. Zarita snarled and leapt to the far wall, where she moved into another shadow.
Okay, so maybe I got overconfident with that one. But I'll kill you both before I get hit again!
Nixie, Alfreda, and the last soldier placed their backs to one another. They all stared outward.
Okay, she has to fully get out of the shadows before she does anything. We have to act quick.
Zarita leapt from the shadow in front of Nixie and kicked out at her. Nixie hopped to the side, and yet Zarita pushed forward until she connected with the soldier. Together, they fell into a shadow. A moment later, the soldier plummeted from the ceiling and onto the floor. It shattered.
And then there were two.
Nixie positioned herself in front of Alfreda, but with her back toward one of the walls.
I have a plan. Trust me.
Nixie brought the vape pen up to her lips, and then inhaled. The magic of Linnet's song was starting to wane. Nixie could feel it. And without that extra boost to her reaction time, they would surely be killed. Alfreda made a slight motion to move, but Nixie shook her head. And then Nixie grabbed both of Alfreda's shoulders and held them. They stared into one another's eyes, and in the way that a married couple communicated, Alfreda seemed to understand. It got dreadfully quiet, and the vape swirled within Nixie's mouth. Her insides pulsed with apprehension. If Nixie missed her mark, or Zarita didn't take the bait.
Behind you!
With all her might, Nixie pulled Alfreda to the side, and then pushed her out of the way. Alfreda allowed herself to be guided, and thus moved out of the way of Zarita, who came pouncing toward where they once stood. The dagger was poised, and Zarita's eyes narrowed. Nixie jumped back to create more distance between the sharp point of the dagger and her own body. However, the trap was sprung. Alfreda was well out of the way, and so it was only Nixie and Zarita. Nixie exhaled as hard as she could. Thick, golden vape smoke collided with Zarita, concealing her within its confines. As Nixie's back hit the wall, she threw herself to the left. The dagger struck the wall a second later and became stuck. Within the smoke, Zarita moaned and groaned. When the smoke cleared, Zarita fell backwards to the ground. Alfreda was closest to Duinya's cell, and she was clear of the area of effect. In an instant, Alfreda moved up to the cell and started fiddling with the door. Nixie slowly approached where Zarita laid.
What did you do to me?
As soon as your stupid company came to our city, I started developing vape smoke that would paralyze our kind and cut us off from our magic. You were the first I ever used it on. Now, we know it works.
Alfreda opened the cell door, and Duinya leapt into her mama's arms.
Mama! or Mom again.
We would never leave you behind. Ever.
Alfreda walked over to Nixie with Duinya in hand, and Nixie scooped her up in a big hug.
Oh, sweetie. I'm so sorry that you got snatched up. We love you so much.
I love you too, Mom and Mama.
The Citadel rocked slightly.
It doesn't matter if you've saved the kid. You can't stop what's coming. We have a backup plan.
What are you planning? Why did you take our daughter?
Mama, they said they were gonna rip my soul from my body to bring someone back. Someone who had died.
Someone who had died? Oh, no.
That's right. Since we can't use the kid, we'll have to use the backup. And then, you'll all pay.
We have to get Duinya out of here, and then we have to warn the others.
Alfreda and Duinya moved to the doorway, but then stopped when Nixie stayed in place.
Nixie?
Nixie pulled out another vape cartridge from her bag, one with a bright sky blue tint. She put it in the vape chamber. She stared into Zarita's eyes.
Darling, go on ahead with Duinya. I want to have a grown-up talk with Zarita.
Zarita started moaning a little, and yet her eyes never broke from Nixie's stare. Duinya started to say something, but Alfreda simply placed an index finger on her lips and led her from the detention wing. Nixie didn't move until both Duinya and Alfreda were out of sight. She stepped closer to Zarita.
No, please.
Please? No. There will be no pleases, or I'm sorries, or I was only following orders. You took our little girl away from us. You struck her at least twice. You caused my family anguish, and you did all of these things willingly. And now, you face the repercussions.
Nixie inhaled on the vape pen and then bent down to Zarita. She forced Zarita's mouth so that it was open, and then she leaned in. When Nixie was an inch above Zarita's lips, she exhaled, and so all the smoke went into Zarita's mouth and into her throat. With a quickness, Nixie closed the Nymphian's mouth and placed a hand over her lips.
Breathe deep. Take it all in.
Zarita's body was convulsing, and her eyes bulged. Nixie stood up and glared down at her.
That growing tension you're feeling? Now, you can taste a fraction of what you put my family through. I hope you enjoy being melted from the inside out. It will be a long and painful process.
Nixie turned around and ran off to join her family.